Ladies and gentlemen, our next topic, Woke Inc. Please welcome, from the National Center for Public Policy, Justin Danhof, former U.S. Secretary of the Interior, David Bernhardt, and your moderator, co-host CPAC Now, Mercedes Schlapp.
We should definitely have a countdown clock till President Trump. What do you think? But in the meantime, you're stuck with us, but we're in very, very good company. And I'm so thrilled to have Secretary Bernhardt with us, as well as Justin. And this is a very important panel, because I think what we are trying to understand here is why and when corporate America went woke. So I'm going to start with you, Secretary Bernhardt, in terms of when did we start seeing this change, and were you surprised that this happened?
Well, let's be clear. This isn't necessarily a new phenomenon. If you go back and look, this is the groundwork from the 1960s. Our educational institutions, the government bureaucracy, media, entertainment, and now the boardroom. It's not a new phenomenon.
So, Justin, to you, we've seen a transition of almost these CEOs. You know, back in the day, the CEOs were kind of like supporters of the Republican Party. They were giving checks to the Republican Party. And yet, all of a sudden, you start seeing like the diversity officer having an enormous amount of power of what's happening in these corporations.
Yeah, the org charts have completely changed, and the Secretary's right. What we're witnessing is the left's march through the institutions. So you're right to say the Marxists took over in the 1960s higher education, and that's right where we are with big business right now. We have a chance to course correct it, but the left has been intentionally taking over boardrooms. They've been giving voice to the most woke employees, and the outside groups that engage business, I have to say, this is where the right has fallen down over the years. The left activist group, from PETA to Greenpeace to the unions and everywhere in between, including activist investors, they really engage with business to push their policy issues, and the right, I think we ignored it at our peril.
That's fascinating. The activist investor, who would have ever thought? Now, Mr. Secretary, we know that BLM, when all these riots happening, they were burning down cities, they were working with Antifa. These corporations got so scared, and they just threw millions of dollars into Black Lives Matter. Where's the money now?
Well, that's the $60 million question.
Right, right.
Where is the money?
And they keep asking, I mean, you've got the person that has the $1 million house. Now they have issues with the IRS. So, but do corporations, should be held accountable for basically spending this money recklessly with these leftist groups?
Well, they actually probably got a tax deduction for it, as they gave to whatever organization was hosting the fiscally sponsored organization of Black Lives Matter.
Justin, I want to dig in deeper here. There's organizations like, companies like BlackRock, very powerful, very influential. You have woke corporations going from American Express to Delta. They've moved into this ESG model. Explain this to our audience.
Yeah, so ESG, I say it, I talk about it a lot, and people's eyes gloss over. Just reorient your definition. It technically stands for environmental, social, and corporate governance. What it really means is liberal politics influencing business. That's all it is, folks. And it's from everything from donating to BLM, from kowtowing to the CCP, while moralizing here to the United States of America. So you're right to point out the hundreds of millions of dollars that corporate America gave to BLM as they were burning down American cities. But hey, guess what? That's what got us all awake to the woke. Because as that happened, we saw a complete transition in the populace. For the very first time, big business pulled underwater with conservatives in 2021. It's never happened before. So that's why you're all here. That's why you have an inkling that something's wrong. And we're going to dig deep into how we got to this situation.
David, also we know that when it comes to like the local government, state governments, these leaders, federal government, they're also very influential in where the money's going in terms of investment. Can you walk us through that process?
That's right. There's a lot of investment and dollars in retirement accounts, other funding mechanisms at the state, local, and federal level. And to the extent that those local, state, or federal leaders want to have an influence on the types of things that they invest in, they can make some positions to do that. States like Texas and West Virginia and a number of state treasurers have begun to say, hey, if you're going to boycott activities that are very important to our communities' social and economic welfare, like the development of natural resources, if you're going to boycott those activities, we're going to think long and hard about whether we should be investing within your organizations. And that's something that's taking place right now as people think through what is the best way to address this.
So, Justin, I think one of the bigger issues we're also seeing is when it comes to, in terms of these businesses pushing these radicalized trainings. It could be critical race theory. It could be changing it from Hispanic Heritage Month to Latinx Heritage Month. You got to use all your pronouns. I mean, these employees, they feel like they have to be silenced. I mean, they feel like they can't speak up.
Yeah, that's the cancel culture. The cancel culture is the Coca-Cola employee that simply doesn't want to go to the training that tells him to be less white while not culturally appropriating. That's exactly where it is. And let's drill down a little bit deeper, too, on the hypocrisy of the moralizing of the Coca-Colas and the Visas here in the United States, while they turn a blind eye to actual slavery and atrocity in the CCP. So we just had the Genocide Olympics, right? The CEOs and executives from places like Coca-Cola and Visa and Airbnb that sponsored it, they were hauled in front of Congress and asked, do you even believe that there's human rights violations in China? They wouldn't even say that much.
Wow.
Yet they bend their knee to Black Lives Matter in the United States. And Larry Fink, again, he is all in on ESG investing here in the United States, pushing that on American corporations while ignoring what's going on in China and investing more money there. So I have to say this, if your moral compass is set by Larry Fink, your compass is broken and you need to fix it.
David, should fund managers be making policy decisions? Now you're seeing that they're becoming such a part of the influential lobbying efforts at the governmental level as well.
So my position is very simple, that people that are accountable for public dollars should get out of the business of deciding and articulating and advocating any policy activities. They should be in the business of managing the funds for a return of investment that's good for the people that need those funds, number one. Number two, they should oppose all efforts to politicize, whether it's on the left or the right. And three, a political official at the end of the day should be held accountable for the management of the votes associated with that fund, because that is the only way the American people at the local level, the state level, or the federal level actually can hold somebody accountable for the activity and the choices that are made.
Justin, your reaction.
Yeah, there's thousands of votes that take place every year, and again, Larry Fink, BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street have way too much influence over it. For the longest time, these are passive asset managers, meaning the money is not theirs. Millions of people invest in these funds because they want a return on investment. And so until 2018, these funds didn't vote on ESG shareholder resolutions or for board members unless there was an extreme circumstance, because it's inappropriate and presumptuous to think you can vote on behalf of millions of disparate Americans who have different policy beliefs, different preferences on board members. But that's exactly what Larry Fink is, inappropriate and presumptuous.
So, David, you're part of the America First Policy Institute. I think, Justin, you brought up a great point again about this activist investor, about the right groups really not engaging these companies. Do you think that we're going to see a shift where more of these center-right groups are going to push back on these corporations? I know we do it here at CPAC and at ACU, but do you think we're going to get organized enough to face these woke corporations and push back?
Well, efforts like Justin are doing are critical to that. Number one, everybody can contact the customer service office of an entity. Every investor can contact the investor relations of an entity. And beyond that, at the end of the day, the boardroom sees no downside to being anti-right. No downside. Right. And maybe they will, maybe they won't, but today they don't.
So Justin, you've talked about this before when it comes to these shareholders, that you find that those conservative shareholders, or even those, I would just say, pro-America shareholders, they're not really vocal or even present in many of these shareholder meetings. Share what you have seen as you've been, really investigating this issue across the board in these corporations.
Yeah, it's been lonely, I have to say. We attend dozens of shareholder meetings every year to press woke CEOs on the issues, but let me tell you, there's dozens of affinity groups on the left on all range of issues, pushing companies to go even further to the left. So if you show up at the annual meeting of Facebook, for example, it's flooded with leftists who think somehow they're not taking down enough conservative content. I'm not kidding you, folks. That's what they're there clamoring for. Same thing at Twitter, same thing at Amazon. They're asking them to digitally burn more books. So we need to balance out the discussion in the room, and you need to take back your franchise and vote. There's a reason these boardrooms are leaning so dramatically to the left. So when their woke employees speak to the top, they're actually all speaking the same language this day. And every annual meeting, you get a vote for the board of directors. There's absolutely no reason that Al Gore should get 99% of the vote every year at the Apple shareholder meeting. He didn't invent the internet, folks.
He's still around? I haven't heard that name in such a long time. David, let me ask you, we've also seen corporations, they really would not give any dollars to, campaign dollars to Republican members in the Senate or the House if in any way they supported President Trump or they objected to the impeachment. They all related to January 6th. Okay, last time I checked, Republicans were pro-business and pro-capitalism. I find that to be shocking. What has happened there?
Well, I think the reality is that there is no pressure on the other side.
Right.
They are terrified of pressure from one side, and that is demonstrable. And that is ultimately their choice. And we have a choice of talking about it, highlighting, acting on it, and pushing back or not. And that's why we're here.
Do you think, Justin, that the pendulum will swing back to where woke corporations can become more awake than woke?
How'd we do with higher education? Did we lose them in the 60s and swing it back? That's our problem. If we engage with the same way the left has, absolutely. That's one of the great things about what the liberals did in this corporate space. None of it was done in a smoke-filled room. It was all out in the open. Everything we've ever done at the Free Enterprise Project was a reverse 180 of how the left engaged. So the left files, shareholder resolutions demanding affirmative action for boards of directors. We file shareholder resolutions demanding that boards diversify their thought and viewpoint and ideology. So there's levels of engagement throughout that the left has figured out how to use the tools, but they gave us the tools at the same time.
Right. I think one of the phenomenons that at least I'm seeing, and I want to get your thoughts on this, David, is that you're finding alternatives. All of a sudden, you find many of these Republicans or conservatives or someone that's just simply pro-capitalist and pro-America saying, I want to build a financial institution that will help gun owners. Or I want to, I am not going to go with these woke values. You're finding literally these tech companies, these alternative tech companies like Truth Social Media, Getter, alternative media companies as well. It is a growing phenomenon, and I don't want to call it alternative. I just want to call it pro-America. What are you seeing? Well,
that is one of the greatest things about this country, is everyone has an opportunity to take an idea and turn it into an opportunity and move it forward. And people are going to do that, and dollars will flow to the products that are good. At the end of the day, if you have a better product, you're probably going to get it to market.
Well, Justin, same question to you. I mean, don't you see don't you feel that there is a sense that at least we can have some balance on the right, where you're going to see more options for Americans to choose and then be able to leave like an American Express?
Yeah, I think that we're going to find, financial institutions, social media firms pop up, but let's do both. Let's walk and chew gum at the same time. Let's try and disrupt the BlackRocks of the world. Let's try and, engage with American Express and Coca-Cola while we're building up the pro-American economy as well.
Yeah, I would like the secret recipe of Coca-Cola. That would be great. Let me just get your final thoughts. I'll start with you, David.
Look, we will end up in a better place. There's no question. This is a great country. We're going to head the right direction, and we'll get back there.
Dustin.
The American capitalist system is the greatest system mankind has ever created to lift people out of poverty.
Yes.
It will prevail. ESG and wokeness is a cancer. Let's kill the cancer and save the host.
Thank you so much, Justin, David. This is a great panel, and thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.